Section 3 is going to cover the difference between using a command line interface and a graphical user interface, or a GUI. Now, these interfaces are how we communicate with the operating system, or how you communicate with your computer in order to do different things. You're probably familiar with using a GUI when you click on icons to either open an application, look at a file, things of that nature. But don't discount the importance and the power of a command line interface, because depending on the situation, a command line interface may be a better approach. So that's what this section is going to focus on, is to make sure that you're comfortable with using command lines and graphical user interfaces. And again, depending on the situation, one may be a better approach to use than the other, and I'll try to point that out as we go through the course material. In the command line interface, or CLI, tasks are accomplished with type commands. This course will make extensive use of the CLI because there's many benefits, such as more options and greater flexibility. Commands can be automated with scripts, and they're more consistent across OS versions as compared to GUI icons and their locations. Some of the drawbacks include more typing and remembering the syntax and options, but this reference guide will alleviate some of the difficulty of remembering the commands and their options. Now let's take a look at how we open up a command line interface to work with. So here are the instructions in text. This is in the reference guide, but I will walk through the steps here so that you are more comfortable with how you actually get to that command prompt. So what you do is in Windows, you start with the Start button, type in CMD, that's short for command prompt, and it will bring up the icon here. You can click on that and it will bring up the terminal window. This is the terminal window, and this is where you can type in commands. For the purposes of this video, I made the font a little bit bigger so it's easier to see, and to change that you would just go up to the top banner, right click, click properties, and in this case I chose a font size of 28. You'd probably want something smaller if you're actually doing work. Okay, so that's the Windows command prompt. Now let's look at the Windows PowerShell prompt. So again, click the Start button in the lower left, type in PowerShell, and you'll see the icon appear. Click it once with the left mouse button and a window will open up. Once again, I click the right mouse button on the upper banner, properties, and then you can choose a different font. Okay, now on the Linux side, remember our CentOS machine is a command line interface only, so there is no GUI. So when you log into CentOS 7, you'll be right at the command line, so there's really nothing to do there. In the Ubuntu, you do a similar action. This is the Start button for Ubuntu in the upper left. It's this little symbol here. So if you click that, type in terminal, you'll see the terminal icon here. You can click that, and once again you'll get a command line interface to work with, and this is where you type your commands. If the font is too small, you can go up to the top, a menu will appear, click view and zoom in, and you can do that as many times as you want to make the font bigger. Okay, so that should do it for now. These are the ways that you would get to the command line interface in either Windows or Linux. When you open a command line interface or a terminal window, there are a few things about the prompt that I want to make you aware of. Under Windows, the command prompt is the greater than symbol, and out in front of that would be the current directory. On PowerShell, you'll get the same kind of command prompt, the greater than symbol, but you'll see a PS current directory in front. On Linux, you'll see in front of the command prompt, which could either be the number symbol or the $ symbol, you'll see the username, the computer, and the current working directory. Now these are some of the finer details you need to be aware of, because in the future it could help you, and I'll explain a little bit about that in just a second. But let's look at the actual terminal windows. And so here for Windows, again, you see the greater than symbol prompt, and out in front is the working directory, the current working directory. On PowerShell, you'll see the same information, but it's preceded with a PS. On the Ubuntu side, the CentOS side, let's look at CentOS first, you'll see the username I'm logged in as, the computer I'm logged into, and the current working directory. This little squiggly line represents the home directory. And let's take a look at Ubuntu. And once again, you see the username I'm logged into as, or logged in as, the computer I'm logged into, and then the current working directory. Now, if I did a print working directory, that shows you that this little squiggly symbol is actually representing the /home/Derek directory. If I change directories, you'll see that change. So now I've moved into the Etsy directory, and so that's represented here. Now these finer details are important because if you're a system administrator or you're doing system administration work, you may log into a different computer, and so the prompt will look the same, or it could look the same, but your username and the computer would change. And so this may not be real important right now, but later on, if you are doing some kind of work where you're remoting to a different system, it will help you keep track of where you're at. And that could be important because you don't want to make changes to a system unintentionally. So it's important to pay attention to these details to know who you're logged in as and where you're logged into. Since we've been talking about the terminal window and the command prompt, let's look at one more item before moving on, and that concerns the user privilege level. Now, by looking at the terminal window or the command prompt, we can tell if we're running as a basic user with limited privileges or with all privileges as the administrator or root level user. Now let's take a look here at our basic command prompt, and we'll see here that it just says select command prompt, and we're not running as an administrator. Now this is a good thing from a security standpoint because someone at this command prompt would not be able to make intentional or unintentional mistakes that would dramatically affect our computer. Now if we wanted to run as an administrator, we would have to go down here and open up the terminal window in a similar way. You click start, type in CMD, and instead of left clicking to open the terminal window, you right click and click run as administrator. And now when this opens up, you'll see that the word administrator is here. So at this point I am running with higher privileges, and I can run all commands. Now in PowerShell it's very similar. If it doesn't say administrator, then that means I'm running as a regular user, and that's a good thing. But if I wanted to do some administrative type things, I may have to actually open up the terminal window as an administrator, and then we would see that noted up here. On the Linux side of things, let's take a look at Ubuntu first. Okay, here I mentioned before that there's a difference between the $ prompt and the number symbol prompt. The $ symbol represents a regular user, and so there's certain things I can and can't do. And let me just demonstrate that really quick. If I wanted to look at the shadow file, and I did more Etsy shadow, it would say permission denied. That tells me that I don't have enough privileges to run this command. Now if I wanted to elevate my privileges, I could run the sudo command in front of the main command. So I would do sudo more Etsy shadow, and now I can see that it gives me permissions. I have the privileges now to run that command. If we look at, so that's in Ubuntu. If I look at CentOS, one thing you'll notice here is now I have the number symbol prompt already, and so that would indicate that I'm already at a high level privilege, and I wouldn't have to use the sudo command to elevate my privileges. I'm already at the highest level. So these indicators will help you understand what level of privileges you're running as, either a basic user or an administrator or root level user in Linux. When instructing on the GUI commands, I'm going to cut down on some of the redundancy of constantly noting that you need to click the Start button. So instead we'll start at intermediate spots like Task Manager or Control Panel. So this page here will just show you how to get there by always clicking the Start button, whether you're in Windows or in Linux using Ubuntu. And then you'll end up here by going Start Task Manager and clicking the Task Manager icon. Now when we get further down into the course materials, I'll just have you start at Task Manager, and that way we can eliminate some of this redundancy of constantly saying go to the Start button. And here you'll see that'll be true for things like Task Manager, Control Panel, System, Windows Setting, and File Explorer, Windows Explorer here. Now there are several ways. One last note is there are several ways to accomplish the same task, and sometimes there's key shortcuts or other ways of getting to some of these menu icons. But the important thing is if you just always start at the Start button, we can have a consistent approach to getting to some of these commands.